Hey guys, it's Shaylin. I'm here today with another writing video. So today I'm doing my 2023 writing wrap-up and 2024 goals. I do this every year. It's always kind of fun to look back on. I always then re-watch this video when I'm making my goals for the next year. And it's always fun to see how completely naive and off base I was about how the year would go, because I watched back that video, and even though there was a lot of stuff that I didn't say concretely in the video, but I knew what I was thinking when I was saying it, and oh boy, was I wrong. I had some unexpected failures this year. It's fine. I actually did have a really good year in 2023. Writing was fine. It was normal. I feel like I've gotten to a point with my writing where I can just consistent and I don't really have insecurities or hangups about it that come up. Like, that doesn't really happen anymore, and when it does, it's usually like quite rare. Gotten past the point where I reach the end of the year and I'm like, these are all the things I've like. I feel like I don't really have that anymore. I used to have like this huge list of things that I would have learned about writing by the end of the year, and I find I don't really have that anymore, just because I feel like I've gotten to a place with my writing process where I'm just so comfortable with it. It's not something that really requires a lot of effort or like mental gymnastics, I guess you could say, in order to do. It's just become a very like easy, consistent part of my life. And so adding up the tallies, I do tally up the word counts of what I wrote in the year. It's pretty low, but that's because I was only drafting at the very beginning of the year, and after that there was no drafting work. But I felt like I was writing very, very consistently throughout the year, barring a couple points where I was traveling or I had some health issues this year. Other than that, I felt like I was writing very consistently, and there was always something that I wanted to be working on. I never really had a point in the year where I just didn't feel called towards something that I was working on, which was really exciting. And it was probably a better year for me personally, actually, than it was for writing. I tally up the word counts. I think it's interesting. The word counts have really been steadily declining. Several years ago, I think I wrote like 120k in a year, which is wild. As I've gotten more mature with my writing process, the word count has gone down, which is interesting because I feel like I'm writing more and writing more consistently. I'm just doing a lot more drafts, and a lot of the time I'm more on later drafts of a book, and that's not really producing words. So I'm going to start with everything I wrote this year. So with short stories, I actually wrote 4 short stories, which is pretty exciting for me because I feel like I've been in a short story slump over the past couple years. But I wrote 4 short stories: Birth of Dogs, Our Mother's House, Junk Garden, and You Are Contractually Obligated to Withstand Violence. So the total for that was 12,530 words. Birth of Dogs was the long one there. That's like a 6,000 word story. The other 3 are all in like the 2,000 range. The first 2, Birth of Dogs and Our Mother's House, I'm gonna put those in Pareidolia. Actually, I've been trying to flesh out that collection. I considered it done many years ago, the first draft done, but looking back, I feel like there are some aspects of the book that I want to round out more. Actually, I think I'm gonna put Junk Garden in there too. Yeah, so 3 stories that are actually going in my first collection, Pareidolia. I just felt like I had considered it done, but as I started looking back on it, I just feel like there are areas of the book thematically that need a bit more development and a few more stories to kind of flesh out those ideas. So I actually feel really good about those 3 going in there. I don't know if there will be any more that go in the book. They all, I think they fit in there nicely, and then the last one is definitely going to go in my second collection. So yeah, that was short fiction. It was actually like a decent year for short fiction. That was a big goal for my year, was I wanted to get back into short fiction. I don't yet feel like I'm at the point where writing short stories is like effortless. Like, it used to literally be so effortless for a period of time, and then I kind of just fell out of it. I don't really know why. I felt like I really tapped into the short fiction form, and then, I don't know, that concept that I was holding so delicately but perfectly in my brain kind of started to fall apart, and I've been trying to get it back for several years. So have I gotten it back? No, but am I working on it? Yes. I actually wrote quite a few poems this year, all towards the end of the year, which was surprising, but I actually feel really great about it. I'm not going to list all the titles because a lot of them are just too weird to say. I actually wrote 6 poems this year, which I actually feel really great about, and that's something that I would like to do more consistently. And I just wasn't really writing poetry consistently, and it's something that I've been wanting to be more consistent with, because when I write poetry, I really enjoy it. I feel like for me to write a poem, it needs to kind of just come to me, and that wasn't really happening at all. And I think a big part of it is because I wasn't really reading much poetry. So I think if I read poetry more consistently, maybe I will write it more consistently as well. But that ended up being 1,799 words of poetry, which is not a lot, but you know, poems are very short. So then we get to novels. So the main thing that I was working on was my novel, The Animal Sense. This is the novel formerly known as Saltbirds. This is the title you guys probably know it as, but I have changed the title to The Animal Sense, and I've said it in a few videos, and I call it that in an upcoming vlog that I've been meaning to edit. So we're just gonna reveal the title. I meant to keep it a secret, but I can't keep anything a secret, and I also didn't like that Saltbirds was my initials. It just seemed weird. that the book had the same initials as me. That title was based on an original like motif or metaphor that I had planned that just didn't pan out. And so by the end of the book, I just felt like that title did not have the significance that it was meant to, and so I decided to change it, and I like the new title a lot more. I think it fits the book a lot better. I finished the first draft of that book this year. So I wrote 37,559 words of a 78K draft. Been doing quite a lot of developmental editing on it as well. I think I've done 2 or 3 drafts. Yeah, maybe 3. One was kind of light. 3 drafts of the book, and I'm working on another, so I'm not done the developmental editing, but I feel really great about that book and the amount of progress that I made. I finished the book way earlier than I was expecting. I finished it in late March. I also started the first like test chapters. I talk about this when I have a new idea. I always write the first few chapters to kind of acquaint myself with the voice and figure out where I'm going with the voice, so that when I actually start drafting, that part is done and it's easy to get into of my new fantasy project, which the working title that I shared before was Godship, but that's not what the title is going to be. I'm not going to reveal the title for this one, and I'm going to hold myself to that. I'm just going to call it by the acronym, which is TIVO, and I wrote 8,097 words of that, so it's the first 2 chapters. I did some final edits on Honey Vinegar early in the year, in like January, but that was like mostly cuts, entirely cuts, so I don't know what the word count was. It was negative word count for that book. I also finished editing Holding You Ghost. I think it was, I don't know how many more drafts it was that I did. It wasn't that many more. I feel really great about having 2 novels that are done, having one that's nearing that point. I've made a lot of progress with a lot of projects that I've been working on for a really long time, which is great. So in total, I wrote 59,985 words this year. This is like less than half of what I wrote back in like 2020, but to me, I feel like I've been more productive. My yearly word count started to drop a couple years ago, and the first time that it happened, I felt really weird about it. Felt like I'd done so much in the year, and then I added it all up, and I was like, oh, did I actually not do anything? And then it's continued dropping. Actually, I think it's up from last year, but I've really learned for me that this is just completely not reflective of how productive I was. I know that I was writing basically consistently the whole year, other than I was traveling for 2 months in the summer, and my health was a bit whack at a few points. But other than that, I know I was writing consistently throughout the year. I just wasn't writing the first draft of a novel, and that's what really pads that number. And I was only doing that for like a month and a half near the start of the year, and after that I wasn't writing the first draft. I can't wait to be writing a first draft again. It's my favorite part of writing. I was prioritizing editing more than drafting, which is how it's going to be, because for me the editing process takes longer than the drafting process. And so if I draft a book, I'm going to have to spend double or more, triple that amount of time than editing it. I'm just a very slow editor, because I just think for me I need to like ruminate. So in terms of publications, I had it was a slower year for publication, but honestly I wasn't really submitting much. I barely had anything to submit because I didn't really have any new short stories. 3 of the stories that I wrote are going in Pareidolia, so I'm not going to submit them, and then the other one I just finished the first draft, so I wasn't submitting any of the stories that I wrote this year, so I only had 2 stories to submit. And I did a handful of tiny bit of poetry submitting, but that was about it. I published 2 poems, actually, so my first ever poetry publications. The first one was called How to Gut a Fish When You Are a Fish, and that one was published in Augur. And the second one is called My Gender is a List of Things I Don't Understand, and that one was published in Vagabond City Lit. That one you can read online. The Augur one is in their issue, and I know at some point it'll be available to read online, but it's not yet. And then I also published 2 short stories. I Am a Wolf in Wolf's Clothing, which I realized that I haven't announced this anywhere, and it came out in like September, but it's because my issue was so delayed getting to me in the mail. Literally never posted about it anywhere. But I did have a short story come out in Filling Station called I Am a Wolf in Wolf's Clothing, so that's a print story. And then I had one story come out online, You Know Where Your Body is Buried, which it came out in Mud Room. That's probably of all the publications this year the one that I'm the proudest of. The 2 poems, I mean, it was exciting to have poetry publications, but I don't put as much weight on my poetry. So let's just run through my goals. I had 3 goals for the year. I actually accomplished all of them, which isn't that impressive when you only have 3, but I still did. So the first one was to finish the first draft of Saltbirds, which I have now changed the title. So finish the first draft of The Animal Sense. I actually thought, I misremembered this. I thought that my goal was to do the first big round of developmental editing, which I've done. But actually the goal was just to finish the first draft, which I finished that back in March. My second goal was to get Holding a Ghost ready to go on sub, which I did not think was going to happen. And so I had kind of midway switched that to just get it ready to send to my agent. But no, it is ready to go on sub, so I feel great about that being done. My last goal was to write 3 short stories, which I ended up writing 4. That honestly, of all of them, feels like that was the most Herculean task, just because some of those stories were so hard to write just because I don't know how to write a story anymore. For my 2024 goals, I really only have 2, and one of them is tentative. I like to be very choosy with my yearly goals. I think I learned from my mistake when I was younger. I would make like 15 and I would kind of try to anticipate every single thing I was going to do in the year, which I think is a terrible strategy. If you have like 15 goals, you can't prioritize all of them. Naturally, new stuff is going to come up. You're going to have no wiggle room. And then what happens is, at least for me, I would get to the end of the year, I only would have done maybe half of what was on my list. The least important ones just keep getting recycled year after year after year. You never prioritize them because you know you're not going to do all your goals anyways. At least for me, that's what I found. So I really changed my goal setting strategy to just identify like 2 to 4 of the most important things that I want to get done. So this isn't everything that I'm going to do, but it's just the stuff that I'm really actively prioritizing because I want to leave room for other stuff to come up and to be realistic as well. My biggest goal for the year is to draft Thibaut, my fantasy book. I'm really excited to have a first draft again. I haven't had a first draft since I finished The Animal Sense, which was nearing a year ago at this point, and I love drafting. I spent the whole year planning this book. I got the idea for this just at the tail end of 2022. It's been a whole year of working on this. I think it's almost ready to go. I'll probably be able to start drafting it within the next couple months. It's actually pretty well outlined, just because the whole plot arc really just came to me quite clearly. There are some bits where it's a bit blank and I have some wiggle room, which I'm excited about because I can kind of discover those sections. The general beats of everything are pretty much laid out, so I'm hoping that I can draft it fairly quickly. So that's my main goal. My only other goal is to get The Animal Sense ready to go on sub. I don't really know exactly how to phrase this goal because we're at the point where it's going to depend on feedback cycles, and you never really know with feedback cycles how long they're going to take and how many you're going to need. I don't really know how many feedback cycles I'm going to need for this book because I do feel like it really needs more feedback than my other 2 books. With The Animal Sense, I think it needs a lot of feedback actually. I think it's going to need probably several rounds of feedback just because some aspects have become so intricate. I think this is just a book that needs a lot of editing. Not in terms of magnitude, in terms of like massive changes to the plot, but in terms of intricacy. There are just a lot of very intricate, strange interpersonal connections, and making sure that they all weave and connect is quite challenging. Been the biggest challenge of that book, and I think that that's just something that requires many drafts in order to really get in place. There are just so many ideas and relationships that need to be like really vibrant but also interconnected in like a causal way on the page. So I think I knew from the first draft that this would just be a book that would require a lot of editing in terms of intricacy, and I think it needs a lot of feedback in that regard also in order to check in and see if things are being expressed the way that I want them to. I don't really know. I would like to finish editing it, and saying that it's ready to go on sub, that might be a little bit ambitious. It would be more accurate to say that I would like it to be done to the point that I can like send it to my agent. I don't really know exactly. I want to finish editing it is the easy way of saying this, but it's hard to say exactly what point I want to have it at just because there are so many variables. So I think this has to be a you know it when you see it thing. I think at the end of the year, I'm just going to have to look at this goal, look at the book, and ask myself, am I happy with where it is in terms of how far I've edited and how much I have left. The other thing, and I didn't set a goal for this, is I would like to aim to write poetry more. I mentioned this earlier, even like aiming to write a poem a month or something, but I didn't set any goals for this. So I don't actually really have a specific goal, but that's just something that I want to put like some more active effort into. Finally, in terms of reading goal, so last year I had upped my reading goal at the beginning of the year and set it to 75 books when I normally set it to 50 since I'd exceeded 75 several years in a row. I very quickly fell behind on that and had a bit of a slower reading year. I read, I think, 72 books. So I ended up very early in the year moving that back down to 50. So I'm just setting it for 50 again. I'll pop up a little screen cap of all the books I read in the year. I think my favorite books that I read in the year were, well, my favorite was Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. That was easily my favorite book of the year. There weren't as many books that really stood out to me. Like, I didn't have a ton of favorites. Our Share of Night was the absolute, by a landslide, standout out book of the year for me. I just wanted to close this off by doing a little channel update. I don't really usually talk about the going-ons of this channel because who really cares, honestly. But in 2023, I think I created the content that I was the most proud of. I was getting told that by you guys as well. I was getting tons of comments saying, like, you've really upped your game. People started saying that I was in my masterclass era, which I really appreciated because I felt like I had been putting, like, a next level of effort into my content, and so I'm really glad that it showed. And then near the end of the year, I completely fell off and didn't post anything. That's not for any particular reason. I was just too busy, honestly. I really like managing this channel consistently and being able to post every week or almost every week, but sometimes it just is not, it just is not possible, and it just was not possible. I have just been way too busy to script anything, let alone film it. I don't really know, this is not like an intentional hiatus or anything. I would really like to get back into creating regular content, but I've just been so busy. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. It's not like I'm on like some intentional break. I'm on an unintentional break. I just really haven't had the time. But that said, I do need to start looking to script some content. So if there are any topics you would like me to cover, please let me know in the comments. I really do want to be creating content that you guys find helpful. So that is all for this video and for my little yearly wrap up. I would love to know what you kind of feel like your biggest accomplishment of the year was in terms of writing or personally, either one, and what your goals are for this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!